We have 45 minutes with you today, and I'm very excited to have Brian Cassin from AWS to join us today, and I'll let Brian introduce himself. Brian is actually going to open up the presentation, but really talk about his experience, the challenges, and the issues, and the success, and the momentum that we are having with our companies working in the cloud. I then want to introduce Sumo and talk about our success and really close the session. So Brian, I'd like to hand over to you to begin the session. Thank you.
Sure, thank you. And by way of introduction, thank you all for joining today, and thank you for Sumo for all your great partnership over the last couple of years. My name is Brian Cassin. I'm with AWS based in New York, as you can tell from my accent. I am the global category lead for financial services for Marketplace. I'll get into Marketplace in a little bit, but what I was hoping to do today, as Colin lined up, was I want to just take you through a little bit of the journey of what we're seeing in financial services with AWS and give you some more context and some more color about what we're seeing and how we're helping financial services firms transform on AWS. So with that, Colin, if you could advance the slides, just one more. So as you can see here, one of the things that we think about quite a bit is trying to give the institutions the ability to differentiate today, but also be able to adapt for tomorrow. By empowering them with modernizing their infrastructure is obviously number one, but changing customer behaviors and expectations and helping them drive business growth obviously is one of the biggest pieces we're looking to do. All of this while supporting the most stringent security, compliance, and regulatory environments out there. We're now starting to see the new normal for banks is the cloud. 5 years ago, when banks weren't thinking about the cloud at all, they didn't even think the cloud would be ready to handle banking workloads. They were concerned about key banking features like encryption and missing many of those from our services. They decided to build on the private cloud. But today, banks are seeing the cloud as a new normal. They're seeing the public cloud as a good mechanism to help them save money, be more agile and more elastic in how they're developing their tools. As one globally systematic important bank executive told us at reInvent, it's not about the if, but when. And now we're seeing banks like HSBC, Goldman Sachs, National Bank of Australia on the reInvent stage with us talking about their move to cloud. And an interesting article that I sometimes quote when I'm on this page is from DTCC, Depository Trust Clearing Corporation. Cloud computing has reached a tipping point as the capability, resiliency, and security of the services provided by cloud vendors now exceed many of those of the on-prem data center capabilities. So I think there's a couple of things that the financial services industries are starting to see with us is the ability to trade a lot of that capital expenditure for OpEx expenditure, but also being able to feel secure that the data, the workloads, and others that they're running in the cloud are ultimately secure, and that some of the largest financial institutions trust us with their data and with their technology. So if you advance one more slide. So as this slide says, multiple forces are driving converging onto cloud. I talk about them a little bit here. I think about them in a couple of different buckets. We spend a lot of time, as you can imagine, speaking to our financial services customers. And that's global. That's across EMEA, that's across North America, that's across APAC. And the things that are coming true and what we're seeing and how we're trying to help them are all these 6 buckets that you'll see here, right? And I talk about regulatory compliance continues to be a significant expense driver as regulatory oversight has continued to expand. We see a lot of competition out there. And that's not competition between the banks, but that's also competition from the new fintech entrants, with traditional players. And now we're starting to see more and more of the incumbents or the banks, insurance companies, payment providers, capital markets firms starting to lever some of those fintechs that are out there as ways to improve their digital engagement and other things. So, it's at an all-time high. Customers have more choice now than they had before any time in history. So everyone's trying to adapt very rapidly. Security is job zero for FSI firms. It's job zero for AWS. We think about this from a shared responsibility model. And a lot of the things that we focus on that a lot of the on-prem facilities weren't doing, right, is, a lot of it is around encryption and how we secure our data centers, whether that's encryption at rest or encryption in transit. The firms are sitting on petabytes of data, and I think this is a really big one and something that, many of the services that AWS has and a lot of our partner firms have is the ability to help, either for compliance purposes or back testing or security or for regulatory reasons, because they think that they can use that, mine that data to be able to identify actionable items. And then last, the thing that I think about on this slide a lot is resources are scarce. As more and more enterprises make the move to cloud, finding the right people to have what to drive this change is important, especially in the light of shrinking budgets, declining margins, declining revenues. And that's why there's third-party partners out there like a Sumo that are born and bred in the cloud that can help with a lot of these migrations and a lot of these workload moves. As well as, there's services within AWS that can help, whether that's professional services or solution architects and other programs to help you migrate. So if you could move forward one slide for me, please. This one for me is what we're seeing. So this is really how we're starting to really help the financial institutions. There's three real tenets here: access to capabilities to meet new needs. A lot of what you're seeing over there is around machine learning. How do we help our customers build tools and services that can simplify processes that maybe were taking a longer period of time or took a lot of manpower to try to simplify a lot of that, whether that's data analytics, we all know, serverless, we all know, HPC and grid computing, Internet of Things, chatbots, those types of things. In the middle, right, one of the areas that everyone's looking at is how do I improve my cost, my expenditures, right? So how do I get out of those, managing those expensive data centers and allowing someone to do that, right? Obviously, that's a big piece of how AWS can help customers. And then transforming culture to become more digitally native. I think this one is, we're all seeing this, right? Expectations from customers of the banks, insurance companies, capital markets firms. People are expecting that experience to be similar to how they operate in their daily lives. So tools and services that could get built more rapidly, right, by using some of the tools on the back end is super, super important here. So I think about this really in four real flavors, right? How do you modernize disparate legacy systems to improve for agility and scale? That would be number one. Number two is how do you meet the rapidly changing consumer behaviors and expectations? That would be two. How do you drive business growth, right? By harnessing data and innovation. That is probably, although it's three, it's probably the most important. And then four, how do you build with confidence, the most secure and resilient cloud? So a lot of this AWS is helping with. A lot of it too is, how do partners fit into this mix? And I'll get into that a little bit later on in this talk. But if you advance the slide, I always share this next slide, which is about what we're starting to see in the FSI world and the financial services institutions. And this is really about the migration. Cloud is transforming the way enterprise application portfolios look. And how do we help them from an AWS perspective? How do we help them transform that through, procurement tools? And this is where Marketplace can come in. Some of the stats that I think about here. So there's a Cisco Global Cloud Report or Index that stated that by 2021, 94% of all workloads and compute instances will be processed in the cloud. 74% of those cloud workloads will be in public cloud, which is a 27% compounded annual growth from 2016 to 2021. And on top of that, 75% of the total cloud workloads and compute instances will be software as a service. And why is this all interesting? Well, we all know that many of us on this call, and I had it in my prior life, right? The typical application portfolio is somewhere between 100 to 1,000 applications. The server architectures that existed over the course of the history of a lot of these firms is often monolithic, right? So there's this ability or this need to be able to break that apart, to become more agile, to have more disparate or microarchitecture type technology, so you can innovate faster, right? So what we see on this 1,000 is, there's probably that number there, 10 to 60 of in-house developed applications. In perpetuity licensing from third-party services, which in some cases is from 300 to 500 software vendors, is 10 to 30% underutilized. So what does this all mean? There's just high potential for cost rationalization, right? So from the information that we've collected from our customers, we see it's potentially about a 20% on-prem retirement. And how are they doing that? So, I'm sorry, this is in the way. Our customers now are starting to look at how do they move to SaaS, more SaaS-based applications, where the partner that they're working with can handle more of the infrastructure, right? Moving to serverless and containers for microarchitectures, right? Using virtualized applications for Amazon Machine Images running on EC2. And then, of course, there are still some things that are going to run on-prem. So we see this modernization method to SaaS and serverless and container-based and subscription-based models as one way that AWS can help them. If you forward one slide, how we're helping a lot of these firms do this is through AWS Marketplace. So within Marketplace, as a way of background, it's a digital software catalog that allows customers to very quickly be able to find, buy, deploy, and manage software coming through from third-party solutions. Within here today, we have over 1,600 ISVs from 7,000 products. But the really interesting thing that you'll see here is, our numbers are continuing to grow as the number of active customers and the number of active AWS customers that are coming in to look for third-party solutions to help them build new services for their customers. 260,000 active, right? We have over 8, and those numbers are interesting, as we know that a lot of these customers are coming in and using this software, as there's over 850 million hours of EC2 are getting deployed monthly on this. The other interesting bits here is specifically for people that are in EMEA, as most of you are, or in APAC or North America, these services now for customers can get deployed into the regions that they want to be in. So deployed into 20 regions. And within here, there's over 39 categories. I lead the financial services category, where we're looking at services from the likes of FICO or KDB or Volante or NewNet, right? Helping banking and insurance and capital markets firms be able to find those solutions to actually help them. And all of this is done so we can give our customers flexible consumption and contract models, easy and secure deployment. All the invoicing and purchases made through here come from show up on one consolidated bill. And then for customers that have committed spend with AWS, they can retire some of that spend by purchasing software through Marketplace. So for our customers, we're finding this is a good way for them to modernize their portfolio by finding services that are running natively on AWS. So if you go to the next slide, this slide for me tells the story of people always ask, who are some of the firms that are leveraging AWS? And if you think about, this isn't all of them. This is a cut of the ones that have allowed us to use their logos. And what I thought I'd do is I'd tell a couple of stories just of how some of these firms are migrating to AWS and some of the services they're using. So I'm going to start in the banking sector. DBS, for example, and I think everyone probably knows them, one of the larger banks in Singapore, is using AWS to re-architect its technology to be more fintech-like. And they're building a digital bank. And as the digital revolution is redefining the banking industry with AWS, the bank is able to better experiment in a digital way and deliver new applications more rapidly while adhering to the highest standards of security. The digital banking customers, we've been told, are bringing in twice the revenue of a traditional customer. They've moved all of their public websites to AWS, and about 50% of their traffic is now running on AWS, running about 50% of their total workloads on AWS. Another example in banking is BBVA. They're working with AWS to build a secure, flexible, scalable, cloud-based solution. They're seeing exponential growth in transactions that the digital age is bringing to them. So BBVA platform currently manages around 542 million transactions a day, compared to 90 million in 2006. And today, BBVA is working with AWS to manage close to 1 billion transactions a day. In the payment space, Stripe has delivered a PCI DSS compliant payment platform on AWS, and they've been doing that since 2011. The startup relies on the security best practices and easy auditability of the AWS platform. And AWS gave Stripe access to infrastructure that helped them scale seamlessly to increase their developer productivity. Stripe now handles $1 billion every year. In insurance, Allianz UK refreshed its platform by using a completely new mode of delivery on AWS, moving to the cloud and introducing DevOps practices enabled Allianz to deliver a more personalized, data-driven digital customer experience. The interesting bit about this is they developed that solution in 3 months as opposed to 18, right? The duration the company formerly is required to complete such projects, accelerating its time to value by 400%. And then the last two that I'll give you is in capital markets. FINRA you may have seen them on the reInvent stage. They're the primary regulator agency for broker-dealers in the U.S. They use AWS extensively in their IT operations. They've migrated key portions of their technology stack to AWS, including market surveillance and member regulation. And then for surveillance, each night FINRA loads approximately 35 billion rows of data into Amazon S3 and Amazon EMR to monitor trading activity on exchanges and market centers in the U.S. And then the last one I'll leave you with is NASDAQ, right? And NASDAQ a few years ago replaced their existing data warehouses for all of its U.S. equities and options exchanges with Amazon Redshift. On a nightly basis, NASDAQ now loads approximately 5 billion rows of data into Redshift with a 4 to 6 hour window. Amazon Redshift now powers a number of data analytics applications, including its billing system for TOS customers. So I lay those out there because I think it's super interesting to be able to hear how some of the firms that are in our sector or in the financial services sector are leveraging AWS to innovate and become more scalable. So if you skip the next slide for me. So, it's not just about, I mentioned a lot of the large firms, but one of the things that is important is that, the fintech firms, which is I'm going to call it the other side of the equation, are also leaning in heavily into AWS. And you can see some of the large names here that are building new services or innovating more rapidly. And then 100% as of 2018 of the FinTech 50 are using AWS. And there's a couple of reasons why they're doing it, right? Agility is probably number one. And this isn't just for the FinTechs, but this is just across the board, right? Agility allows customers to quickly spin up resources as they need them. Cost savings is a very big one. We think about, trading the capital expense for variable expense. And an example here is Dow Jones has estimated that migrating to data centers on AWS will contribute to global savings of about $100 billion in infrastructure cost. Elasticity, customers, used over provision to ensure that they had enough during peak times. Now with the way that we're structured, right, customers know that they can instantly scale up or down using the services available to them to meet the needs of their business. Innovation is obviously the one that we want to see the most of. I think that's the most exciting for all of us on this call. Having AWS handling some of the infrastructure, the undifferentiated heavy lifting, as we like to refer to it, so you can focus those valuable IT resources on developing applications that different business. And the last one I mentioned with Marketplace was how do you go global in minutes? You can basically put resources out to regions that might have been a challenge before because you'd have to set up infrastructure to be able to support a new region. AWS allows you to do that pretty seamlessly. So if you go ahead to the next slide. Yeah.
Brian, can I drop in a question here?
Sure.
Many of our customers, and including Sumo engineers, rely on standards and best practices and architecture. And as I built and I worked on this piece and on this initiative, I came across a document called the AWS Well-Architected Framework for Financial Services. I just wanted to ask you from your side is, how important is it to actually leverage best practices and you can, I'm a veteran, but you can build stuff, but is there a guidance there that you've seen amongst these customers?
Yeah, so what we're seeing from a lot of our customers, and we actually just published a paper which is available on the AWS website. We're calling a lens, or a well-architected framework. What it's doing is it's setting out best practices for design, deploy, and how to architect for financial services, specifically for the workloads. We're looking to help our customers promote the resiliency, security, operational performance that falls in line with risk and control objectives that you would define. And obviously, this being a highly regulated industry, right? What's really important is that we have the regulatory and compliance requirements, for the supervisory authorities. And the document which is available, I think it's a good read. Happy to share that with folks. There's really 5 tenets in there, right? There's a couple tenets or pillars, I guess you could refer to them, right? There's an operational excellence. There's a security pillar, there's a reliability pillar, there's a performance efficiency pillar, and there's a cost optimization pillar. So each one of those gives you best practices on how to architect your software in the cloud to meet the stringent requirements that are out there in the financial services space. Does that help?
Oh, excellent. Thank you.
Sure. So I realize I may be running a little long here, but I wanted to go through just a few more things. And we talk about AWS and what sets it apart. So if you just skip to the next slide, right? How we're trying to help our customers and all of you on the phone is, right? How do we help you innovate faster, right? Having faster access to data enables the discovery of new business opportunities and creation of new products. That's probably number one. How do we help you realize cost efficiencies, right? Storing data in the cloud allows firms to retain data at a much lower cost than on-prem, and potentially with higher security as defaults in S3 go fully encrypted with access only to those that have created it. Perform more holistic risk assessments and more accurate regulatory reporting. Again, storing data in data lakes makes it easier and more cost efficient to perform required activities such as model testing and real-time simulations. And now a lot of the regulatory bodies are connecting via private link to be able for people to support those reporting mechanisms. And then how do we create an integrated surveillance program? How do we process the massive amounts of data in order to generate real-time reports, extract hidden relationships and insights into the data? So all of these, right? We talk about a global footprint. We talk about security, agility, and innovation. These are really the things that working with AWS we're trying to help with. And we're gonna transition real quick here, because innovation is not just about AWS. This is about our partners. This is about firms like Sumo that can help you both as an Amazon partner network, ISV or partner, as well as someone that's in marketplace that's helping with this digital transformation. So if you skip to the next slide, I just wanted to show you again. We talked about the well-architected framework. A lot of the partners that you see here, the technology providers and the system integrators and consultants, a lot of these have already gone through that well-architected. So they've gone through those pillars and have been assessed by AWS that they're meeting all those requirements. So you're going to get best practices from them when you start to use these partners. And we aim to provide the widest range of technology consulting partners that can help financial services with their cloud objectives. Right, the AWS Partner Network is a global network. There's thousands of partners in here across many different, I'll call them competencies. These are the ones that are financial services competency, but there are ones that are big data competency or machine learning competency. There are other competencies out there that are all available to help you with different areas or different workloads that you may want to look at third-party partners. So if you skip to the next slide. And this one I always end on this one because I just think, for me, it's super interesting. So, how do we, Jeff Bezos talks about the flywheel quite a bit. in this one, right? We try to like outline when you talk about agile. How do you help enterprises, rapidly stand up, dev and test environments, then experiment with new ideas across all their business lines? And then how do these ideas involve new products, services? How could they involve creative and new risk management solutions? So we think about this as, the continuous deployment, enhance the customer experience. How do we bring in more customer data? How do we have more easy provisioning of resources? As I talked about the ideation and the experimentation, and how do you have more rapid product development? And I think all of these things are interlocked with, the services that AWS can provide is, one of the 175 services that AWS provides, but also through our partners, right? How do you lever those partners to be able to help you go through this wheel here of, enabling agility? So I'm going to end there. I hope what I went through here was enlightening. I think about it as just an educational session for all of you on the phone. At this point, I'm going to hand it back over to Colin to talk a little bit about Sumo, and you're going to see how they just fit right into a lot of what we're thinking about at AWS. So, Colin, I'm going to hand it back to you, and happy to take questions later on.
Thank you, Brian. Thank you for waking up early, and it's been a remarkable collaboration, and I look forward to continuing that. So just to reflect on what Brian talked about, we spent a lot of time looking at use cases, initiatives, and what's happening to us today in the world, and really looking at technology today on how it's transforming, but also disrupting the world. So 10 years ago, Sumo Logic was formed, and it actually comprised of a number of geeks, architects, and some extremely influential executives who came together to look at IT to answer a question. And that question was to look at the cloud, but to look at exactly what Brian talked about, is the context of safety, resiliency at scale, but also looking to really drive a model that would appeal to customers today and move them into the new, what I call mature native world. But I just want to talk a bit about Sumo Logic, who we are. So born and bred on AWS. We're celebrating 10 years of knowledge, insights, and experience. We have over 2,000 customers. And I often get asked about what is that differentiator? And it boils down to two things: safety and scale. And today we operate and we protect and we manage, we govern the data for many of our customers, really analyzing 100 petabytes a day, 30 million searches, and really looking at over 500 trillion queries performed on data by our customers. It's more about the value. So today, we are living in a pandemic world. We're facing it. We're working more digitally, but we're generating more data. We know that because we look after our customers, and we want to also understand how our customers and our prospects are consuming data and getting the value back. So business value, the value of all data. Not all data is equal. All data is valuable. And what we want to drive today is the concept of a quick, easy to leverage and easy to use, and really provide you with one platform, one solution, but many use cases. So as I mentioned, I started out in IT about 35 years ago. I was in banking, then I moved into becoming a COBOL programmer, and then I moved into working and having my first job at KPMG, into IBM, into HP, into VMware, and now I'm in in Sumo. But I actually went on this journey, and I've actually seen some severe disruptions in the journey and adoption and advancement of technology. But today we're still managing customers who are in a private cloud, who are still on-prem. We have customers who are actually thinking about their cloud first project, and many are in the cloud mature and cloud native world. For data and Sumo, we collect all types of data. Data exposes itself in a structured, semi-structured, and unstructured way. But we are now really looking at helping customers migrate, modernize, and transform their businesses. And please reach out to Sumo. Like Brian, we're giving you a subset of customers, and we cross many industries. But today, we're going to focus on the financial services and the market segments that Brian talked about. So I talked about the legacy, the traditional, the clouds that exist today. But we're moving to a modern world. But applications are complex. I started off with a 2-tier app. Today, I'm seeing 7-tier to 10 tiers. We're seeing very complex applications. Every single object, every single layer actually really manages itself, but is tightly integrated into a workload or a stack. And that distribution creates a lot of complexities. So there is a real need and appetite for one single platform, unifying data, unifying integration, and not building it, but really having it ready to go. Threat and intelligence, Brian talked about this, but there's a change. The evolution and number of threat surfaces that are growing are significant. The other is operational readiness, is to manage that complexity and adapt. And lastly, I talked about new technologies. Brian mentioned it in his presentation. When we talk about containers, when we look at the world, I'll give an example later on of how integrated testing with Kubernetes is quite complex, but we really solve that problem and deliver best value to those types of environments. And lastly, the shared model, a new operational model. So why do existing tools fail, or why don't they work? Back at the office, many people talk to, when I have conversations with people, I talk about cloud washing. There is cloud and there's true cloud. And I want to give you 6 things that we hear from our customers that really start to really drive that business value with Sumo. Is all data, the limited support you have when you work with certain vendors is that they're focused on the data for their own products. So there is a limitation and siloed view. Can't scale. Today, you need to work with peakages. You need to work with different variations in how how our customers consume services, and not scaling affects latency and performance. The third one is most important. We're very excited that we have brought out a new cloud flex credit model. We thought about this a long time ago because today the notion of overspending, overutilization, and overcapacity is not an option. So we're looking at consumption that really flavors all different types of data, looking at tiered analytics and offering a model and a consumption model that is driving modern businesses today together with AWS. Data silos prevent collaboration. I don't know about you, but you can walk into an organization and see the culture, but sometimes dev, sec, and ops are separated. What we are trying to do is democratize these groups and share that data in a safe and secure way. Analytics, I talked about all data is valuable. We do not penalize to really collect and analyze all data. You need to get all the data to make a decision. I often talk about that notion of garbage in, garbage out, all data. Lack of data can really lead to making informed decisions. And the last one is about security. It's not about traditional security. It's about modern security and the plumbing that you need to manage with microservices and layers that sit above in the ecosystem. So one slide, if there's ever one slide that actually captures and harnesses what we do, is this slide. So Gartner 451, please do visit if you feel it's appropriate. Please come to the Sumo website, link in with us. But Gartner 451 and a number of the analysts are now starting to see that there is traction in a new category called continuous intelligence. Gartner identified 9 forward-thinking and advanced technologies that would progress IT. And continuous intelligence is that new category. And we've been pioneering that for 10 years. And really what I want to describe to you is that on the left-hand side, we have a multitude of devices, infrastructure, applications, storage, and users that are emitting signals. Everything emits a signal, a log, an event, a metric. That needs to be collected in real time. So think of the blue circle as a jet engine, a very powerful jet engine that's ingesting all that data in real time. And there's a lot of it. And what we want to do is continuously collect and centralize, monitor and visualize, alert and notify, search and investigate, and predict and optimize. And on the right-hand side, deliver compelling dashboards and meaningful insights and intelligence to the right people. So it's important that we've automated this process to give developers the right information and the right dashboards, give support and SecOps and the security analysts the right information to detect, investigate, and respond. And at the bottom, we have really, as I mentioned, one platform, one solution, but multiple use cases that really drive operational readiness. The second is security. And the third and the fourth are extremely important where companies today, I'll provide an example. We have a financial company in India that's really mapping, looking at business intelligence and looking at business data and correlating it with machine data to come up with decision-making in real time. And finally, it's about benchmarking. It's not about just building and architecting and plumbing. It's actually about understanding insights and community insights to see how others are building their solutions or what others are finding, and really managing the challenges we face in our business today. So I talked about our history with our CTO came from a company called ArcSight a long time ago. Our CEO has had his tenure at Netscape, HP, Mercury, VMware, and security. I came from IBM. I started out in Tivoli. But security has always been with us. But it's important that if we actually steward, we govern, we protect, we manage, and we retain the data for our customers, we need to be certified and we need to provide the credentials to protect the data. So all those 2,000 customers rely on Sumo. But here are some of the critical attestations that are touching not only us, but the financial services market. So we have many customers wanting ready-to-go PCI DSS content to automate the compliance process. It's important also to look at ISO and CSA, but also look at, Brian just touched on this today, is encryption, TLS encryption, making sure that all the data is protected and safe, and it's in a multi-tenanted environment. So inherent security is critical to our business and to our customers and to their customers. So the best thing is to now just show you and take a subset of some of the customers that I'm personal to in this market, in this industry and market space. So you'll see that there's some synergy, and we've picked up on a few that are actually, have logos that they've shared with AWS and us. But I just want to highlight a few examples here. I think Brian talked about Allianz, but very interesting is Zest. They're small to large, small companies who just really, really want to deliver their service and look after their customers, and others who really, really want to build and unify that data across multiple products. But I'll pick Macquarie Bank, an example of injecting Canary and progressive testing. So the ability to actually inject critical tests into real-time streaming of integration testing and quality testing is critical for Kubernetes. The other is really looking at companies like New York Life and others who've seen that existing tools don't work. They're costly, the maintenance is high, and the day two of operations is significantly high and doesn't yield any value. And lastly, I had the pleasure of introducing Snoop to our user group, where we're looking at open banking in the most native way. And what I love about this company is that they're building their ecosystem on AWS and leveraging the plumbing and microservices to take their company forward. So really, for the financial institutions, the top use cases that we see in terms of metrics is really based around cost management, optimize my cost, reduce the debt, help me drive consumption and flexibility at the best value and best benefit. The second one is probably the top one, where you want to centralize and unify your data. Today I mentioned it's broken, it's old. For me, old data, noisy data is more troublesome than actually having actual data. Thirdly, response, mean time to detection, MTTD, MTTI, mean time to incident and mean time to resolution. Today, we're bound by SLAs, and what we do with Sumo is automate the SLA and SLO process for our customers. On the right-hand side, we're living in a changing world. I wish you, all of you, safety and health, but it's important to understand how regulated and how highly regulated we are becoming, not just with working from home, but working with our assets. So it's important to provide regulatory data to your auditors in time. So we help benchmark, audit, and measure and deliver that data to customers today to fulfill that obligation. Lastly, it's about adoption. Everybody's on a journey. Not everybody's in the cloud, but we have people who are in different phases of their migration, and the value is actually delivering and moving and seeing that change. And lastly, business intelligence. It's about the business process. It's about the application. It's about the customer experience. And lastly, I just want to talk a bit about three things to bring these user cases in together, is to really look and ask you, to consider just looking at our solutions from a differentiating point of view. We actually prided ourselves and patented our algorithms to solve problems, but also to reduce noise. So I don't know about you, there's an alert fatigue out there. Security data, storage data, application data, third-party data. It's important to actually have dashboards that are meaningful, advanced, easy to use, and are intuitive of their user. So prioritize observability. For us, observability is logs, metrics, events, certain tracing to a level where we actually look at different layers in the infrastructure right up to the CDN, to the application. Make sense of the noise and reduce the fatigue. Centralize all operational and security monitoring. If you're using tools today, that's fine, but really capture the data that they're emitting. Leverage that data. On average, some of the larger institutions have over 400 tools to manage, and most of them are open source. So I humbly ask you to contact us, share some of the sharing and some of the best practices that we've embarked on. And lastly is to manage security events. This is around the SOC analyst, the SOC user. Automate that workflow. So I talked about SIM. Many of you might have heard of a SIM. I heard of a SIM, I think it was about 20 years back, where ArcSight and HP really went out on the market and said, we're going to deliver you an automated SIM, but did not fulfill that promise. So we're here today to offer you the ability to detect, respond, to detect, investigate, and respond, and integrate to modern tools that are in our partner list and also shared with the list that Brian shared earlier. And lastly, I mentioned benchmarking. We're actually offering community insights, benchmarking services. We work well with many of our partners, but for example, if we want to measure and benchmark certain threats against certain microservices, against certain industries, we're giving you the ability to share and build that community with our peers and gain that insight. And lastly, I mentioned PCI because this is probably one of the hottest use cases that drives regulation and standards in Europe and in some of the regions that our audiences are in today. So it's really based around managing PCI for the cloud, from the cloud, pre-built automated content, but we also give you best practices so that we enforce, we learn, and we adapt. So we have over 200 ready out-of-the-box applications that have integrated the collection, the analysis, the search, and the query. Most of you will probably have partners that are sitting in this, what I call ecosystem. We call this the DevSecOps blueprint. We have partners who help us in the development cycle, in security and ops across the whole delivery CI/CD chain. So I'm very excited that AWS and us and our partners have a service to offer you that's ready to go and drives that next level of innovation and success. Like Brian, just bringing out a few, I've shared you links to some case studies. I will not go into them in more detail today, but just touching on some of the highlights. LendingTree wanted to really manage their complexity of Kubernetes and drive optimization and reduce their spend. And I think they came down and they improved their costs by 10%. Zest was to actually look at all the data in IT, but correlate it with their business trends. Security and compliance for Moneytree, and DevOps visibility and monitoring. So what you see here are those 5 cases emerging, but it's based around your landscape. So before I end, I just want to leave you with this thought because as I enable my own team, and I'm in the product and engineering and marketing team, I often get asked, what is your differentiator? I've heard it all before. So I just want to go through these. So the first one is transforming data into intelligence for faster decisions. The speed at which we onboard you, collect the data, run your data, and deliver intelligence back to you. The second is we are very proud and honored to be a partner with AWS, but also running 100 petabytes daily is not a small feat. So we feel very good that we've scaled for the Super Bowl, we've scaled for a multitude, for Fox, and really to look at large numbers, but to look at scale in the context not of a linear cost, but of best value. Flexible cloud-based licensing. We just announced tiered analytics and really looking at different elements in consumption and how you consume. No more true ups. You pay a data tax for technologies that don't work today, and where the other vendor says to you, we have to integrate it with that third party. That's a cost. The other one is actionable insights, reducing the noise, but giving you value and information that's meaningful. Democratize, allowing the visibility of data in a safe and trusted way. And lastly, this webinar today, there were many questions about how do we drive solutions. We manage a multi-cloud environment, but we predominantly engage, and our knowledge is significantly strong with AWS. Security one, security first for the cloud. So today I want to thank you all for attending this webinar. It's our first one, and we hope to have more together with AWS and our partners. But we've provided you with some key links, and I just want to actually close off with those links. We've just announced some new research around continuous intelligence based on over 700 C-level attendees, where we talked about the importance of continuous intelligence and how it'll grow in the next year. More information on our Cloud SIM. Try it, test it, see what it does for you. Work from home, again, an important solution as we start to work and consider this to be the new norm. Contact Sumo Logic or myself. And lastly, if you want to hold a workshop, a technical architecture workshop or a discovery workshop, contact Sumo and Ben Hunter, who is our financial services account executive. So with that, I'm going to hand back over and thank Brian again for his collaboration, his work, and his support. So with that, I'd like to end this webinar today. Thank you.